Before I can talk about the actual movie itself, I need to acknowledge that Infinity War is this huge, amazing thing. It is the culmination of 10 years of lead up and hints and building. And it becomes very difficult for me, at least, to talk about like what happened in the story and think of it as a movie when there are now different categories of what movies are. I say this with great amounts of affection for both movies that are stories and art and movies that are culture and spectacle. Marvel Studios did so much work leading into this. I have often found myself cringing a lot at the "it's all connected" moments, but I did not have any of those moments in this movie because this is it. In 2008, Iron Man, Nick Fury showed up, talked about the Avengers Initiative. 2011, Captain America the First Avenger, the first Infinity Stone showed up. Avengers 2012, Infinity Stone is back, and now we introduce Thanos. 2013, I believe, Thor the Dark World, another Infinity Stone happens, and also the rest of that movie. 2014, Guardians of the Galaxy, yet another Infinity Stone and significantly more things happening for Thanos, and we get introduced to more of what he's doing within the galaxy. 2015, Avengers Age of Ultron, yet another Infinity Stone. Vision happens, that's a big deal. Doctor Strange, 2016, another Infinity Stone. Marvel starts believing, oh my gosh, this is actually going to happen, and also so do I. I could talk about the Marvel Cinematic Universe all day, but I will not. They developed all, or like, let's be real, almost all of the characters beforehand so that they could get like the big payoff now. Kind of similar to how in Deathly Hallows Part 2 they just like did not mess with any of the typical stuff of like making a movie or developing characters or stuff. They just like went for it and they had a big old showdown and they had already done all the work-ish ahead of time. So that like when Neville pulls the friggin' sword out of the hat, you just lose your mind. That said, this movie is the first part of a story, not a complete story, and it goes to some very, very like grimdark places. That is something you should think about when potentially bringing kids to this movie because there were a lot of very distressed tears in the theater. But it is a sign that Marvel has built up a universe made up of characters that we love and care about to where when bad things happen to them or when things seem hopeless, that is like an honest emotion that we have along with them and not them just like slapping a sticker of a pop culture figure on some actor's chest and then being like, oh, you should care about them now, DC, I'm talking to you. But actually when you see something happen, it resonates with you. Our entire theater went and just stopped in one dire moment. Oh boy. And I think you can only really do those moments when you've earned them, and at this point Marvel has definitely earned them. They have put in the work. All of the interactions between characters from very different movies and tones somehow lined up perfectly of like, that's not necessarily how I would have like written it had they given it to me, but it feels really right. Bringing in different like places and powers and technology from recent movies was awesome. Like they're keeping this universe fresh and they're growing. They definitely hit their stride with some things better than others. Like when you're with the Guardians, you feel like you're in a Guardians movie. When you're in Wakanda, you are like, yeah, I kind of recognize this from Black Panther, but it doesn't have quite the same vibe. But still managed to bring these very disparate elements together in believable ways, which I literally did not think was possible. I had very low expectations going into this movie. I expected this movie to be a lot like when you give a kid a cup at a soda fountain and then they just fill it with every single soda and it tastes delicious to them because it's sugar, but to everyone else it's just like super gross. For characters, they took their time with them, but were somehow also very efficient, which is a weird dichotomy that I also saw in Civil War and was very impressed by. I would like to shout out Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely, who are the screenwriters for not only this, but Winter Soldier and Civil War. They are masters of what they do, which is only done by Marvel right now. There were two relationships that needed to be like established for the sake of plot, one of which we kind of had an idea of earlier, one of which was like a shared glance in a previous movie, so they needed to do a little more work there. The movie also focused on a few characters, which worked very well. I would argue that they picked kind of one character per location that they were at. So when you're at each location, you definitely were tracking with the emotional arc of one character. There are a lot of actors that I didn't expect to see a lot of or be impressed by, but I definitely was, and that was a pleasant surprise. The opposite is also true too, which was kind of a bummer for me, but you kind of gotta pick your battles literally in this movie. Thanos was surprisingly well done given how little we had of him going into this, and the fact that he's a giant purple monster who wants to get a bunch of magic rocks to take over the world. I was able to have a 30-minute long conversation with someone about where Thanos falls on the Dungeons & Dragons alignment chart, which is not true of most Marvel villains or villains in general, so good job there. I honestly think this movie is as perfect as it could have been, and even better than I thought you could make it. Like, I did not think this movie had the capacity to be as good as it was, and I was stunned. And it felt like reading a comic, which is what these big crossover events are for. I, like, freaked out when certain moments happened, and I was super excited to see characters coming together, and it felt big and fun and cool and hilarious and marvelly. I was delighted and geeky and reminded of when I was a kid and I wore my superhero outfit under my clothes, and when I would check out old Avengers comics from the library and have arguments over who would win in a fight with my siblings. I had a ranked list of who my favorite superheroes were. I was so excited, even though I wasn't allowed to watch it, when Iron Man came out and this stuff was like cool again, because I was no longer as much of the weird kid as I was. I was still a weird kid, but like, I could talk about this stuff with people, and nobody, including myself, had any idea how much it would keep going, and I was just like rolling and reveling in it and hoping that it would last as long as possible. Like, I bought as much merch as I could. I would look at all of the details of all of the movies and pick things apart, and I loved it, and people that I ran into would talk about it. One time at a chapel service, a dude stopped me to ask about the Infinity War comics because he knew I was the person who would know, and somehow that was like the coolest I've ever felt. 2014 was amazing, and I thought that we were in like a new age of good superhero stories that could show the rest of the world what was so cool about this genre. Then like 2015, 2016 sucked, and I just got very, very tired. Then last year, Wonder Woman gave me hope for the genre, and Spider-Man gave me hope for Marvel, and now I am living in a world in which I can just be geeky and happy again, and this is a real thing that's really happening. Thanks for watching. I really love superheroes. Thanks to Marvel for giving me hope and an opportunity to be excited about this stuff again. Please keep going. I'm looking forward to the second part of this story. I'm Bruce Man. Batwayne. Thor 2. No idea when it was released. Honestly, there are 5 seconds of that movie that I enjoy. Aw, beans. Marvel movies order. I don't want to get this wrong. See, in a conversation I would be very confident of my years, but I don't want to say the wrong date for frickin' Guardians of the Galaxy 2. God, what even was Ant-Man? Doctor Strange? Captain Marvel 2019! I just thought it would be the word I'm thinking of is not a family-friendly word. A bit of what happened in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2? All I remember is frickin' Planet Man. He has a name. It's bad. It's very early superhero-y. Oh, it's the guy from the horse movie. Kurt Russell? Ego! Marvel, real subtle with ego. Nah. What? If you haven't read the movie. So, if you haven't read the movie, no one in the Marvel Universe can escape daddy issues. Except my boy Steve, whose dad is dead. Okay.